So let's look at the phpmyadmin interface. Now, if you remember, this is a web browser-based interface to a database server, and that database server could be running locally on your own machine, or more realistically, in the real world, you'd be accessing a database server which is some geographically distant way away. Now, if you're using the Kingston University setup, you will have created one database already when you went through the initialization phase. If you're using your own machine, you won't have any databases, so you'll actually have to create a database. So phpmyadmin on your local machine will have created a database, and there'll be an entry for that in the column on the left that basically says something like db underscore and then your kname. That's the name of the database table. And you will have one database if you're using the university database server. If you're using your own machine, you will need to create a database. And that's pretty straightforward. You pick a name for your database. So in this instance, and in this simple example, I'm going to use student DB. And you go to the databases tab, and the part where it says create new databases, you simply type student DB in there and you click the create button, and that will create a database, and there'll be an entry for it in the column on the left. So now we have our database, either the one that's been pre-created for you by the university or the one that you've just created inside MAMP. What you need to do now is to actually create a table that we can use, so we can actually just have a little play around with phpmyadmin. So we're going to create a table called student, and it's going to have 3 fields in it. It's going to have KUID, it's going to have last name and money. You can see 2 of those are going to be characters, they're going to be strings. One of them is just going to be numbers. And there's different ways of doing this. You could, for example, use the web interface to actually create a table. And if you click on the structure tab, what will happen is that you can give it a name, and then you can say it's going to have 3 columns, and then you can actually use the interface. And what that will do is it will actually construct the SQL that reflects the values that you've typed into the interface, and then send that SQL off to the database server. Personally, I prefer to actually type the SQL directly into the SQL tab. So here's, in case you can't remember, here's the actual syntax for SQL for the create statement. And remember, this is part of the DDL, the data definition language in SQL. We go create table, table name, and then we have brackets, and then we have those pairs. We have field name and then a value repeated over and over again. So here's the actual SQL to create our table that we can use in these examples. It says create table student. So our table will be called student, and then it's going to have 3 columns, and you can see those 3 columns there, KUID, last name and money. And we can run that against the database just by going to that tab and inserting it there and clicking run. Similarly then, we could actually run an insert statement, and what the insert statement will do is it would actually insert some data. So again, we go to that SQL tab, we type that in, and then we click go, and it will actually insert this record into that table. And of course, the other bit of SQL that we use all the time is the select statement, and it looks something like that. We'd go select star from student, and we get the record or all the records back from the database table. Now, if you look at the next video, I'll actually demonstrate using that SQL inside phpmyadmin.